Iran's strategy looks chaotic.
They are creating chaos. They are hurting the global economy. That is exactly what this strategy is designed to do.
That is the point of this video. Most analysts think Iran is improvising. They see missiles, they see threats, they see ship seizures, they see negotiations that start, stop, collapse, and restart. And they assume this means Iran has no plan. But that may be the wrong, because Iran may not be acting like a weak state trying to survive the crisis. It may be acting like a pressured state trying to change the balance of power. And once you see it that way, the chaos starts to look different. It starts to look like leverage. The common belief is simple. Iran is under pressure. Its economy is strained. Its military has been hit. Its nuclear sites have been attacked. Its regional allies have been weakened. So the obvious conclusion is that Iran must be looking for a way out, a deal, sanctions relief, a face-saving exit. But that explanation has one major problem. Iran keeps taking actions that make a clean exit harder. It threatens shipping, it resists full nuclear transparency, it signals escalation, it keeps pressure on the Gulf. So the real question is not why is Iran refusing the easy off-ramp? The real question is, what if Iran does not see this as an off-ramp at all? That is where the framework changes. If you use a business framework, Iran looks irrational, because in a business deal, both sides search for a price. One side offers relief, the other side offers concessions. Everyone tries to get back to normal, but states do not always want normal. Sometimes normal is the problem. For Iran, the old normal meant American pressure, Israeli strikes, sanctions, regional containment, a nuclear program under constant threat, Gulf security system built around U.S. power. So from Iran's perspective, the goal may not be to restore the old order. The goal may be to make the old order impossible to restore. That is the hidden logic. And this is not a video about whether Iran is good or bad. That is not the useful question. The useful question is, what does Iran's behavior reveal about its incentives? And the first incentive is security, not comfort, not popularity, not a clean headline, security. When a state believes it can be attacked again, it searches for tools that make the next attack more expensive. That is why the nuclear question matters, not just as a weapons issue, but as a bargaining issue. If Iran gives up its most valuable nuclear leverage too quickly, it may get relief today, but it may lose protection tomorrow. And that is why the nuclear file is not just a technical dispute, it is a power dispute. But this is where the story gets harder, because Iran does not only have nuclear leverage, it has geographic leverage, and geography is often more durable than missiles. Missiles can be intercepted, commanders can be killed, bases can be bombed, but the Strait of Hormuz cannot be moved. It sits there, a narrow passage connecting the Persian Gulf to the wider world. And through that passage moves a huge share of the global energy system. That makes Hormuz more than a waterway. It makes it a bargaining table. Every tanker becomes a signal. Every insurance rate becomes a political message. Every delay becomes pressure on governments far away from the battlefield. And that is why Iran's strategy cannot be understood only by counting missiles. You have to count choke points. Most people think control means closing the strait, but that is too simple. Closing Hormuz completely would be dangerous for Iran. It could trigger wider retaliation. It could alienate customers. It could damage Iran's own economy. So the stronger move may not be total closure. The stronger move may be selective control, not nobody passes, but you pass under conditions. That distinction matters because selective disruption creates uncertainty. And uncertainty is often more powerful than destruction. If shipping companies do not know whether a route is safe, they hesitate. If insurers do not know whether a tanker is exposed, prices rise. If Gulf states do not know whether their exports can flow, they pressure Washington. That is leverage, not dramatic leverage, systemic leverage. And this is why the usual analysis misses the point. Iran does not need to defeat the United States Navy. It does not need to win a conventional war. It does not need to control every ship. It only needs to make the system feel unreliable. That is a very different kind of power. It is the power of risk. The United States has overwhelming military strength, but global markets are sensitive, allies are sensitive, oil flows are sensitive, domestic politics are sensitive. So a weaker state can sometimes create pressure by targeting the connection between military action and political cost. That is the balance of power logic. Power is not just who has more weapons. Power is who can impose costs the other side cannot easily absorb. This brings us to the second hidden layer. Iran may be trying to separate America from its regional partners. That is one of the oldest strategies in geopolitics. If you cannot defeat the coalition directly, you weaken the coalition politically. You make the alliance expensive. You make the smaller partners nervous. You make them ask, will America protect us, or will America drag us into a war we cannot afford? That question is dangerous because Gulf states do not only think about ideology, they think about ports, pipelines, airports, investment, tourism, energy exports, domestic stability. And if Iran can make partnership with Washington feel risky, then Iran does not need to win every battle. It only needs to change the calculation of America's partners. But there is one detail that changes the whole model. Iran's strategy may not be aimed at one audience. It may be aimed at several audiences at once. To Washington, Iran signals you cannot bomb your way to a clean settlement. To Gulf states, it signals your security cannot depend only on America. To Israel, it signals escalation will not stay inside one battlefield. To China and India, it signals your energy security depends on whether Iran is included or excluded. And to its own population, it signals the regime has not been broken. That is why the moves can look contradictory. One message may be aimed at diplomats, another at markets, another at regional monarchies, another at domestic elites. What looks like chaos may be multi-audience signaling. This is where Robert Pape-style logic becomes useful. The key lesson is that bombs do not only hit targets, they change politics. A strike may destroy a facility, but it can also harden the enemy. It can empower hawks. It can make compromise look like surrender. It can turn a technical dispute into a national survival issue. That is the trap. Tactical success does not automatically become strategic success. In fact, sometimes tactical success creates strategic failure because the attack state adapts, it disperses assets, it raises the price, it searches for asymmetric leverage, and it tells itself, if we concede now, we invite the next attack. That is why pressure will make Iran cave may be the wrong assumption. Pressure can produce concessions, but pressure can also produce defiance. The difference depends on what the pressured state believes is at stake. If the issue is money, then pressure can work. Raise the cost high enough and a bargain becomes attractive. But if the issue is regime survival, regional status, or deterrence, then pressure can backfire, because the state may decide that surrender is more dangerous than escalation. That does not mean Iran is all powerful. It is not. Iran has real vulnerabilities. Its economy is exposed. Its military is under pressure. Its public is not endlessly patient. But weakness does not always produce moderation. Sometimes weakness produces a search for sharper tools. And the sharpest tool is not always the biggest weapon. Sometimes it is time. That is the third hidden layer. Iran may believe time is on its side, not because it can win quickly, but because America may struggle to sustain a long crisis. Wars of choice are politically fragile. Markets punish uncertainty. Allies get nervous. Domestic voters ask why prices are rising. Military planners worry about overstretch, and rivals like China and Russia watch the United States burn attention and resources in the Middle East. So Iran does not necessarily need a fast victory. It may only need to avoid losing quickly. That is a very different strategy. It is not blitzkrieg. It is attrition through politics. This is why negotiations do not necessarily mean the war is ending. They may mean the war has moved from missiles to terms, from strikes to verification, from battlefield control to diplomatic control. In a normal negotiation, the question is, what does each side want? But in a power negotiation, the question is, who gets to define the next reality? Does Iran reopen Hormuz because it accepted the old order? Or does it reopen Hormuz under rules that acknowledge its leverage? Does Iran allow inspections because it surrendered or because it traded access for sanctions, relief, and recognition? Does Washington get a deal that restores deterrence or a deal that quietly admits coercion failed? That is the battlefield now, not the table, the terms. And this is where most coverage gets too narrow. It asks whether Iran wants a deal. But the better question is, what kind of deal would strengthen Iran after the crisis? Because Iran does not only want relief, it wants a position where it cannot be attacked easily, a position where Gulf states must account for Iranian power, a position where Hormuz is not just an international waterway, but a bargaining instrument, a position where the nuclear program remains a card, even if it is constrained. That does not mean Iran gets everything it wants, but it means Iran may see a weak deal as worse than no deal, because a weak deal takes away leverage without changing the threat environment. To understand this, go back to a simple balance of power rule. States do not give up leverage unless they receive security in return. That rule explains more than ideology does. It explains why states build alliances, why they resist inspections, why they hold territory, why they keep weapons programs alive, why they distrust promises, because promises can change. Governments change, presidents change, threat perceptions remain. So when Iran looks at the region, it may see a brutal lesson. If you lack leverage, you get pressured. If you gain leverage, you get negotiated with. That is the hidden logic, not morality, not trust, leverage. Now, this does not mean Iran's strategy is guaranteed to work. It may fail, it may overplay its hand, it may push Gulf states closer to Washington, it may provoke a stronger military response, it may damage its own economy, it may trigger domestic anger, and it may misread how much risk the United States is willing to accept. But even failure would not prove the strategy was random. It would prove the strategy was dangerous. There is a difference. A chaotic actor has no model. A dangerous actor has a model and may miscalculate. Iran's moves are more consistent with the second category, not random, risky, not irrational, coercive, not defensive only, revisionist. So what should we watch next? If this framework is right, 3 tripwires matter. Tripwire 1, the nuclear stockpile, not speeches about the stockpile, not broad promises, actual verified access. If inspectors can confirm where the key material is, the crisis may become more manageable. But if access remains delayed, partial, or contested, then the nuclear issue stays alive as a pressure point. And as long as that pressure point remains, the logic of escalation remains, because Washington will fear hidden progress and Iran will fear giving up its strongest card too cheaply. That is the first signal. Verification. Tripwire 2, Hormuz governance. Do ships pass freely? Do insurers return? Do tankers move normally? Do Gulf states feel safe exporting, or does Iran keep testing the boundary? Because the real question is not whether the strait is technically open. The real question is, who sets the rules of risk? If Iran can make shipping conditional, even informally, then it has gained a new kind of bargaining power. That would mean Hormuz has changed from a route into a political instrument. And once a choke point becomes political, it is hard to make it neutral again. That is the second signal: control without formal closure. Tripwire 3, the Gulf states, watch Bahrain, Qatar, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Oman. Not only their public statements, watch their behavior. Do they deepen security cooperation with Washington? Do they quietly distance themselves? Do they seek parallel understandings with Tehran? Do they push for de-escalation faster than Washington wants? Small moves matter because Iran's long game may be to make the region accept a new reality. America can still project power, but it cannot guarantee cost-free security. If Gulf states begin hedging, the balance of power has already shifted, not on a battlefield, in their calculations. This is the part that makes the crisis bigger than Iran. If Iran proves that a weaker state can absorb strikes, threaten choke points, retain leverage, and force negotiations, other states will study that model. China will study it. Russia will study it. North Korea will study it. US allies will study it too, because every crisis teaches a lesson. The 1991 Gulf War taught many leaders that American precision power was overwhelming. Iraq and Afghanistan taught another lesson. America can win battles and still struggle with political outcomes. The Iran crisis may teach a third lesson. The United States can punish a state, but punishment does not always produce control. That lesson is dangerous, and that is why Iran's strategy matters. Not because Iran is stronger than America, it is not. Not because Iran can dominate the Middle East overnight, it cannot. Not because every Iranian move is brilliant, it is not. It matters because Iran may be testing a larger principle. Can a regional power use vulnerability as leverage? Can it turn geography into bargaining power? Can it turn nuclear ambiguity into deterrence? Can it turn negotiations into a battlefield? Can it force stronger states to choose between escalation and compromise? That is the real framework, not chaos, coercion. So when you see the next headline, do not ask only, did Iran escalate? Ask, what pressure did the escalation create? Do not ask only, did negotiations resume? Ask, who benefits from the terms? Do not ask only, is Hormuz open? Ask, who controls the risk? Do not ask only, will Iran accept a deal? Ask, does the deal change Iran's position after the crisis? Because this is how power works. It hides inside details that look technical: inspection access, shipping insurance, transit rules, frozen assets, regional basing, ceasefire language. But those details decide the future order. The hidden logic behind Iran's strategy is not that every move is planned perfectly. It is that every move points toward the same strategic question: who controls the next stage? If Washington controls it, the crisis becomes a return to deterrence. If Iran controls it, the crisis becomes a step toward regional primacy. If nobody controls it, the region enters the escalation trap. And that may be the most dangerous outcome, because leaders often enter these crises believing they have options: bomb, threaten, negotiate, pause, escalate, declare victory. But once the balance of power starts shifting, those options narrow. The trap begins when each side believes the next move will restore control, and the next move keeps proving the opposite. So the mistake is treating Iran's behavior as noise. It may be a signal. The mistake is treating Hormuz as an oil story. It may be a power story. The mistake is treating the nuclear issue as a technical file. It may be a deterrence file. The mistake is treating negotiations as the end of the war. They may be the next battlefield. That is why Iran's moves look chaotic only if you use the wrong framework. Use the power framework and the pattern becomes clearer. Iran is not simply trying to escape pressure. It may be trying to convert pressure into position. And if that is true, then the crisis is not just about what Iran does next. It is about whether the region has already learned a new lesson. America can still strike, but striking is not the same as controlling. The headlines change, the logic does not.